Hey, what is up? We're here with another review of The Mandalorian. This is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, click off and then come back once you've seen it. This episode's titled The Jedi. It's the fifth episode of season 2, and a ton of stuff happens. Now, we thought this Ahsoka reveal might take a little bit during the episode, but they decided to go with it right away in this great opening scene where you get this village and the bells are ringing. You hear blaster fire in the background, and you're like, oh no, who's attacking the village? And then you realize it's Ahsoka. And she's just going through killing fools like it's nobody's business, um, slashing them down with the lightsabers and then going back into the smoke, kind of reminiscent of the second Force Unleashed, that original trailer we got, where it was just Star Killer killing people and then turning off his lightsabers and it being pitch black. It had those sort of vibes, and it also had the landscape wise. I was like, this isn't Mustafar, is it? Because it had that feeling from the Rise of Skywalker when Kylo Ren was killing fools on Mustafar too.
Right. Yeah. Same
Uh,
vibe.
but what were your thoughts on that initial introduction to Ahsoka Tano?
First, this is I feel like this is gonna be our longest video, quite possibly ever, because there's just so much to unpack. Like just this opening scene alone, there's like so much just like cool stuff to talk about. And like it's only like the first 5 minutes, not even of the episode. What I thought, yeah, I wasn't expecting them to reveal it. I thought they were gonna go to the Bo-Katan route and like kind of let us like ease into like whatever new planet it was, and then drop it in on us. But they wouldn't. I feel like they definitely knew. They're like, okay, the fans are gonna go crazy for this, so we might as well just show it already. And it was great. It was so cool. Like, and it wasn't even like a big like the camera didn't like pan up and there's like a dramatic on her face. You just saw her like cut down the one guy, and you just saw her like face like still cloaked. And I was like, that's so free. And I remember I was like, I was watching with my brother and like I gasped because I was like, oh my god, like like it really is her. And I was like, it really is Rosario Dawson. I was like, the rumor mill is like 10 for 10 thus far in regards to this show. So, and yeah, I was thinking I didn't even go to like Force Unleashed. I went to the Kylo Ren Mustafar scene just because like the forest, her cutting down the way, like the light, the only real source of light is like the lightsabers, and just her was like mowing down everyone. It was just like really cool. It was such a great way to start. Like I think like Dave Filoni, who directed and wrote the episode, knew exactly like what the fans were gonna want from the episode. So he was just like, we're gonna show the main attraction like up front, like not like be coy about it. We're just gonna like immediately show her what's up, like what's going on with her, and just immediately just start there. So great introduction sequence overall.
Right. And then right after that sequence, she cuts down fool after fool. The poor people don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just getting cut down. And then she basically says, you have a day to tell me where your master is. And we'll talk about who that master is later, because that has way broader implications. But we'll get into that. And for those of you who aren't necessarily as familiar with Ahsoka Tano, we'll get into that a little bit later in this review. But we get the title card, and then Mando is flying onto the planet. And of course, Baby Yoda is trying to get that little ball he's always wanted since the beginning of season 1. And that plays in later. And it's funny how such a little thing has become such an important object to the show in a weird way.
Right. Right.
So Mando lands on the planet, him and Baby Yoda go into the city. He has this great line. They ask, are you with the guild? And he says some really cool line like, last time I checked.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I thought was funny, just because he straight up like lied at that point,
mhm.
even like full well knowing that wasn't true. And I was just like, that's cool.
I like how intimidating it sounds though.
Mhm.
Um, so he gets into the city, right? And it just looks dead, right?
Yeah.
You don't see anyone. I mean, there are people who are just like kind of scuttling away from him. They're not supposed to talk to him. And clearly something's wrong, and Mando knows that. He meets with the magistrate, and we're like, whoa, who is this character, right? And we later out, I'll just say this part now because it's not as important to mention later.
Yeah.
We find out that her planet was basically destroyed during the Clone Wars.
Mhm.
And she became this, like, she was one of the people in charge of building Imperial ships.
Right.
essentially. And it seems like she's still doing that from what Ahsoka says, which we'll get into later yet again when we talk about who her master is, because that's super important detail. So we get that Mando meets with her. She offers him a Beskar spear. So Beskar seems to be like, for as rare it is, there seems to be people who have it around the galaxy.
Right. I mean, you also have to like remember like the Empire probably has like the stockpile, so it's probably just spread out amongst its people, just because they were the ones who like did the purge. So I mean, who have we really is we've only really seen it thus far with like the client and with like now with the magistrate. So at least that's what I remember.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. But we get that scene, and then Mando goes hunting for Ahsoka, right? He says, she says, I'll give you this spear if you kill the Jedi. And so he says, okay. He goes out hunting for Ahsoka, puts Baby Yoda down. The owl, if you guys know Ahsoka from the TV show, the owl has always followed her. And it flies right above, and I'm like, oh, someone's about to come into the encounter Mando. And she comes lightsaber swinging, ready to kill him. And just slams it down. There's this great moment where the lightsaber goes right off of both of his Beskar armor gauntlets. Yeah. And I was just like, whoa. Because I never thought about it. I'm like,
lightsaber versus
lightsaber
Beskar.
proof?
Yeah.
I was like, it's lightsaber proof? I'm like, I don't know if I like that. I'm like, oh wait, there's a lot of stuff that's lightsaber proof if you think about it.
Right.
But that moment was great, and just the way that I at least I think it played out with, him blocking lightsaber blows with his gauntlets, and then basically trying to set her on fire, ropes her in like they did. Yeah.
I was, like what really because like they got like Tamora Morrison back as Boba Fett. They got Katie Sackhoff back as Bo-Katan. They did get Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka. So like, not that I don't doubt Rosario Dawson's acting like talent. I was just like, I wonder how much it will feel like Ahsoka. And the moment that sold me is when he like ropes her in and she like kind of looks up and then she smiles at him and then she like jumps up. I was like, that was a pure like Ahsoka moment. It was like 1 second long, but I was like, yep, it's the same. It's the same person we all like know and love from Clone Wars, from Rebels. Just that little smile was that all that needed to sell me on it.
I 100% agree. That moment where she gets roped in, and I can't remember if it's a film or a TV show for Star Wars where someone cuts the rope.
Yeah.
Like, oh come on, that's all you have.
I think it was maybe it was Attack of the Clones when Obi-Wan fights Jango. I feel like that might be a thing.
Mm-hmm. It might have been.
I'm remembering another scene, but I feel like it might be that.
But anyways, I was like, oh, she's just gonna cut the rope and keep on going. And then she hops over the tree and just leaves him hanging. And I'm like, oh my God, this is why Jedi are so much smart. Like they're just completely better fighters.
Right.
And then he chops it down immediately. I'm like, this is why when you think about the Mandalorian wars against the Jedi, you're like, oh my God, this is
why there was a war and not like the Jedi just like took them out. Like there was an actual like equal fight like going on because they both could hold their own against each other.
Right. And that's why you have people like Boba Fett who are like in other Mandalorians. They're Jedi hunters in a way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we get this whole scene, and then he says, wait, Bo-Katan sent me for you, Ahsoka Tano. And then she like automatically is like, who's the baby? And because of course, like anyone else, of course, you're gonna ask who's the baby.
And I was wondering, and also too, because I think you said this, one of it like brought it up like a few episode reviews ago, but like Mando doesn't seem to know what a Jedi per se is. So like I kind of like how as soon like he immediately like, even though he still pulled his gun, he was like, all right, look. He was like waving the white flag. He's like, okay, I'm on your side. Like he was like, I feel like he was like kind of like freaked out because he was like, I have no idea like what I'm dealing with here. And I just love that like, I guess, detail and just like the way it played out, just because like he hasn't heard of like the Jedi, doesn't know what the Force is. Like he couldn't explain Baby Yoda's powers. So like I love how he was just completely like overwhelmed in the moment by like by Ahsoka.
Right, but he still manages to find a way to fend it off,
Indeed.
which I think is interesting because if it keeps on going, he's done for.
Yeah.
But that moment plays out so well, and then we get to her talking to the baby, and we find out the baby's name, the child's name, Baby Yoda's name, Grogu.
You're right.
What were your thoughts about them revealing that in this episode, and then what were your thoughts on the name itself?
It like took us like a solid second to process because I was like, oh shoot, that's his name, and like, not that like I don't like because don't know anything about Baby Yoda, so I guess it would have been like premature of me to assume he didn't have a name at some point. Like, honest to God, like I was just like assuming they were gonna call him like the child, or like we would call him Baby Yoda for like at least until like the last season of the show, and he would like finally christen him with a name or something. But when she was like, oh yeah, no, he's got like a name, and I love the reoccurring detail whenever like Mando says it, like he like or just anyone says it, like Baby Yoda like perks up, like he recognizes, you're like, oh, like he knows his name. Like, it's just like we've gone this is 13 episodes now without like actually having a name this whole time, and I don't know, I thought it was pretty interesting. My brother was like, that doesn't sound like a Yoda name. I was like, oh. But I don't know. I just like I don't know. I thought like for some reason like it would play out as Mando would like name him or something. But I just never assumed he would. He already had one, so it came like it took me a solid second to like process like the whole situation.
And I love when Mando finds out his name and says his name for the first time. Baby Yoda's just like,
Yeah,
it's there's
like
that little
recognize.
moment.
Mhm.
It's like pure joy of just being like Baby Yoda is like completely recognized
Yeah.
as like now
Mhm.
Baby Yoda is Grogu, which it's still gonna be called
It's gonna
Baby
be
Yoda
yeah
forever.
for sure. Yeah.
Um, but we learn a lot of interesting stuff about the magistrate in that scene, and then they say the next day we're going to test out how Grogu, Baby Yoda, I'm going to be switching between the two, but it's going to confuse me forever now,
Right.
how powerful he is in the Force. And the next day he seems like he's stubborn, right? He doesn't want to do it, and she talks about his backstory,
Yeah.
how he was trained at the Jedi Temple, but you know, was taken away during presumably Order 66,
Mhm.
66
Right.
and hidden, and had to hide his powers in the Force to survive.
Yeah. Like that backstory alone could feed into like a potential like whole like season of like the man, like just like the notion of one like Yoda species like wasn't like extinct or anything. They reached out, they found another one, and they were planning to train him. And then we have this mystery Jedi who like, or presumably Jedi, someone saved him, but Grogu can't remember who. So you have that potential like X factor in the wind, and then it's just like I don't know, just the nature of like Order 66 survivors that always seem to play out in a good story, like um, uh, Cal from Fallen Order, Kanan Jarrus from Rebels. Like there's such fascinating potential, especially seeing as how like they like explicitly wrote in that Grogu can't remember who saved him. Like they could have easily just like wrote that off for who, like they just like, oh, someone saved him but he got shot down. Like he explicitly doesn't remember what happened in like
Right.
that period. So there could be so much to unpack there.
But there's something so sad about that,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
child separated from like his being and forced to hide who he is
Mhm.
to stay alive for like 20 years.
Right.
Um, and it leads that mysterious question: who saved Grogu? Who saved him? Like, was it a Jedi? Did the Sith or the Empire take him and were trying to use him at some point, and he got away, and that's why they're specifically looking for Grogu as the Force user?
Mhm.
Like, how does that all tie back in? Because I have a feeling there is some story behind that.
Right. They're really digging into their inner J.J. Abrams, setting up all these like mystery box like storylines, like just like amidst every like we still have to talk about the magistrate's master, like all these like different stuff that could like play off one another. The other thing too I just wanted to say was I don't know, just like the nature of like that Baby Yoda was like aware enough to like hide himself, like he kind of like we've all assumed he was just like a cute like toddler or whatever, and but like this episode I feel was like the most like I felt like Baby Yoda was an actual like character, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
beyond just being like, because like just like that detail of he knew like he knew he understood that he had to hide his force powers, like he's seen some stuff, he's like adapted to survive type thing, and I find that so much, it makes him so much more like fascinating that there is this like backstory to him now.
Yeah, and you know, he won't lift the stone that Ahsoka gave him and
Mhm.
pass it back, but he will the little metal ball that we talked about at the beginning, which I thought was a great moment. And Mando's so excited about it, even though he can't really, you know, he says it himself. He struggles to understand what they're even doing and how it's
Yeah.
possible. And Ahsoka does her little exposition of the Force is not the power, right? The Force is the source of the power. And they get into this interesting moment where Ahsoka basically says, I can't train him. There's too much pain in him, in suffering. And she said, you know, even the best of Jedi can be corrupted by that. And that moment is so, there's something so tragic to that moment, because you know, this is where we'll explain it to people who haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels. You know, her master was Anakin Skywalker. She grew up idolizing him and, you know, training under him and becoming his best friend and almost like a brother sister relationship. And then he, who was viewed as like the kindest, most like, you know, always going in the front of battle, always trying to help people and save people, he
Was the
turned
best
to
of
the
them.
dark side.
Yeah.
And
Even
then
the best of them could fall.
yeah, and then the next time she sees him, these are spoilers, by the way. This is a spoiler if you haven't seen Rebels. So if you want to go see Rebels, mute for about like 30 seconds and then come back. I'll like wave my hands like this. But basically, she sees Vader and fights Vader and almost dies. And there's that moment where he's like Ahsoka, and it's between Vader's voice and Anakin's, and you
Right.
see that like how hard it hits her about the fall, and her reminiscing all these years later about how her life has been changed, you know, and how the galaxy has been changed.
Right.
Anakin Skywalker turning to Darth Vader destroyed the whole galaxy and put it into shambles. So she sees that possibility and says, I can't let that happen again. I can't be responsible for that. Really
Yeah.
powerful moment.
I just the one thought I had too when she was bringing up like Baby, it has a lot of like very like is like a very like unrestrained like emotional spectrum. I remember Yoda's quote when from like Phantom Menace when he goes, uh, was it fear leads to the dark side, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And I thought like again like the fact that they're giving like Baby Yoda, who hasn't even like said a word in all these episodes thus far, like so much like dimension here, and the fact that this is not just a kid, like this is a kid who's been through like two different like wars and like a whole like lifetime of like God knows what. So like I just find that like Ahsoka was like just like that little bit like apprehensive about replicating it, even though like I guess that ties into the show's whole like nature nurture thing. Just because like she thought of Anakin was like I don't know if I want to take that chance, and like she kind of left it to Mando to follow up on that.
Yeah. So basically, she refuses to train him, but Mando says the wording's really important, because he says, "Will you?" It's like essentially, "Will you find a way to train Grogu or Baby Yoda?" And she's like, "Yes." Essentially, I don't think she even says yes. I don't think she even makes that promise, but
Yeah,
it's presumed. They go to the city, they attack. They have this line like they'll never see a Jedi and a Jedi and a Mandalorian. They'll never see it coming.
right.
Did you find that epic or cheesy? Because I found that kind of cheesy.
I mean, I don't know. Like I didn't regard the line with like the way probably Filoni intended to have like this kind of like let's do it. But I was like, I mean, they did say like the magistrates did explicitly say she's like the Jedi are like the sworn enemy of the Mandalore. So I was like okay, I'll roll with this. Like I mean, yeah, it came. the way it was placed in the conversation just came a bit weird, I think. But I mean, I don't know. I was kind of like indifferent to it. It was just like
Yeah,
technically this follows through. I was just like, all right, I'll
yeah.
roll with this.
It gets. We'll talk about this later in the directing and
Mhm.
like knowing sometimes when to cut and like cutting sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
Because that's a case where I feel like you could have just cut it and not said that line, and it would have been. I
the
think it
same
would have
scene.
been better for it.
Yeah,
Because I don't know. Maybe it's just me personally. It felt like it took me out for a second.
okay,
I was like,
gotcha.
oh, that's weird.
Yeah,
But anyways, we get into it. Ahsoka starts charging. She jumps over the wall and she starts just killing fools like it's nobody's business, right?
mhm.
Like we always think Jedi is the most peaceful people, and then I was like, damn, don't they kill people? I'm like, I thought they're like Superman. They don't really kill people. And then I'm going through my head. I'm like, oh, the whole Clone Wars, they're killing a ton of people.
For sure, for
I'm like,
sure.
oh, they just don't kill good people. Yeah.
Right. Also,
Um,
I just want to say this quickly before you move on. Sorry, I just what took me out a little was at first the fight choreography for Ahsoka, but then I realized it's because I'm so used to seeing Ahsoka like act superhuman on like Clone Wars, just because like the just because of animation, she's like appears more fluid or whatnot. Like I don't know, like at first, like the first like that first battle sequence too in the intro, I was kind of like something feels weird, but I was just like it's just because she's moving like as a stunt woman, like a human stunt woman, like what as a way it wasn't like none of this was bad choreography. I was just like I'm just used to her seeing her like flipping and jumping and like I don't know if this like this is probably just me, but like I just wanted to mention that because I just thought that was like, oh yeah, this is just the jump from animation to live
I
action.
I don't disagree at all
Mhm.
because I did find that a little weird with the first scene, and I like it when she jumps over the wall. I like how that action plays out really well.
Right.
Um, I like how she just looks at the person like run or I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Um, and the person runs away, and then the other person tries to shoot her, and she just slices him at half. You don't see the body, but you know she gets
Yeah.
sliced in half, and you just see the bell just fall down below. I love the power that they show that Ahsoka has over
Mhm.
these. She's developed over the years. It's like she's not a Padawan. She's been a Jedi Master for like 30, 40 years
Yeah.
now. She's pretty good at it. And she goes and has this little talk again. Where is this master? It's like, I'll spare you. I'll spare your life if you lay down your arms and tell me where the master is.
Mhm.
Um, doesn't say anything. The magistrate is not a snitch, apparently. So bummer on that. Orders to kill her, and she gets, immediately blasted at. Just bombardment
Mhm.
of blaster fire, and we get into this cat and mouse game with the Jedi, which seems to be the worst idea ever, right? Like,
That was full Batman Begins energy right there.
Mhm.
Just picking them off in the shadows one by one. Great stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, did you not see what happened to your guys at the beginning? You guys
Right.
went out alone and not as a massive group, and you got
Mhm.
destroyed because of it. And she just keeps on cutting down fools. Uh, how did you feel about the action in that sequence as opposed to earlier? Did you kind of get the same vibe, or did you slowly adjust to it?
No, I think like by that point I had like kind of like slowly like adjusted my head like it's just like just a different like medium, but also like again because it was such a different like the intro sequence was like her like charging directly while here like I said was like more of like a Batman like strategic like just picking them off from the shadows. So that I was okay. That I felt was just like that whole ending sequence like specifically with her versus like the thugs or whatnot was that I thought was like pretty cool and just we could talk about this a little later when we're talking about like the technical aspects, but like just like the way the the color of the sky and like the smoke coming out, like kind of like her like jumping in and out. I thought that no, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And you know, Mando, I almost called him Django. Uh, just jetpacks in, kills two people like it's nothing because honestly, to him, it is nothing at this point. That's easy. Uh, frees the people who are being stuck to, imprisoned in those electrical,
Right.
their version of an electrical chair, essentially.
Yeah.
And he has this face off with um, the hired gun guy. I can't remember the actor's name.
Mhm.
And Ahsoka had finished cutting up everyone. They had like their version of HK-47. They had like a different unit of it, which a little shout out to those people who watched Knights of the Old Republic. HK-47 was one of the best characters, like this most witty
Right.
droid who had like this sass to him that was amazing. And Ahsoka basically hops over the fence and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go get the information about the master, where your master is from the magistrate."
Right.
And Mando's just facing off with this dude, and they're having this conversation, or not? They are. Mando's not talking at all,
Mhm.
but the hired gun's like, "Who do you think's winning?" Like, "You're winning." Like, "I think your person's winning." Yeah, it looks pretty good. Did you like that whole monologuing thing that he had?
That's when I felt some of the dialogue felt a little like out there. Like I like that first part you mentioned where he's like, who do you think is winning there? And when he hears like the magistrate's spear drop, he's like, ah, shoot, I guess he's like, I guess your side won. Like I was okay with that, but like I don't know, maybe it went on a little too long, or like maybe they just cut back to it a little too often. That I was kind of like, Mando conceivably could have like shot his head off by like a few cuts ago, but I was like, I don't know. I feel like it might. That was when I was kind of like taking it because I was like, I don't know. It just took a while. Although I do like the concept of them having like a Western like showdown outside, and then like inside it's like a like more of a traditional like fight scene.
Right.
I don't know. It just brought me out a little as much as though I do like the concept of the scene.
Yeah, I think the other thing with me is them cutting back and forth a little too much. I
Mhm.
wanted to see the fight straight up, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to see a continuous field of the fight between the magistrate and Ahsoka. I feel like the fight didn't look bad.
Between the magistrate and the
Yeah,
okay.
but it felt like, all right, you're getting your momentum in the fight. I like the stakes, the feeling of it, the balance between the two opponents, even though Ahsoka's going to win in the end.
Right.
But I like this balance. And then they cut away, and I'm like, oh, I was just kind of sort of getting into the
Yeah.
fight, like, ooh, who's gonna win? And then you cut away, and I'm like, and it's a habit the Mandalorian has, and I think it's almost a budget saving happen, where
Mhm.
there's action happening, but you don't get to see it.
Yeah. I mean, well, I mean, this is a short segue, but like the actual fight between like from like the scenes that we did see of it, like how did you feel about it? Like how did you like choreography? Like how it all played out?
So overall for the whole episode,
Oh no, just that last fight scene between
oh,
Ahsoka
okay.
and the magistrate.
Um, overall, I thought it was fine.
Hmm.
I think it revved up well towards the end. I
Yeah.
think the first time it just feels like they're hitting each other's blades, and then as it goes on, it feels like the stakes really rise.
Yeah.
Um, the camera work I felt like could have been a little bit better, to be perfectly honest,
Hmm.
uh, in just making me feel a little bit more into the fight. But that's just me personally.
Right. I know for me, like the first half of the fight was strange for me, but then I kind of thought like because it just seemed like real slow and like methodical. But then I was like, this is giving me the last Obi-Wan versus Maul fight on Tatooine is more like patiently like waiting back, and I was like, okay, I could in under that framework, I was like, I could kind of like roll with this a little bit. I do like the one shot they would keep showing where it was like the camera was like pulled back and like you kind of like saw them like fighting on like the walkway. Like, do you know which one I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah, 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 yeah.
That shot I really enjoyed. That I
It,
thought was real cool.
it was like the not the establishing shot necessarily, but the
Well, it was
wide
like that.
shot for the
It was
scene.
like you had like the magistrate's like tree in the like the background or whatever. You kind of saw like the little like river she had going on, and you
Right.
just saw them in the middle like going back and forth. That I
Hmm.
thought was a cool shot. That was probably
Yeah.
like, one of my favorite shots in the episode.
Yeah. And I think it improves as it goes on. And I like how it ends with
Mhm.
Ahsoka, disarming her. Ahsoka gets disarmed herself from one of her lightsabers, and it's kind
Right.
of like a reset moment. And she's like, "Okay, I'm done with this, right? I'm done playing around.
Mhm.
I'm not playing games anymore."
Yeah.
And pretty quickly disarms the magistrate and puts the lightsaber right up to her neck. And what does she ask? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? And I'm like, what? Grand Admiral
I heard that
Thrawn?
line. I was like, first, I was like, dude, there's like 10 million other things happening in this show. I was like, I can't believe we're adding like this guy into it because like that guy alone demands like two Mandalorian level seasons of just like because he was just that big of a character on Rebels, and I was just like, oh my god. I was like, you realize how much you changed, like you changed the game. Like we thought the game was changed when like Tamora Morrison showed up in chapter 9. Then we thought it changed again when Bo-Katan was like, you're not actually true Mandalorian or whatnot. And now it's changed yet again. I'm just like, oh my god, this this show can never predict it, can never predict it.
I mean, and as Qui-Gon Jinn says, there's always a bigger fish.
Indeed there is. Indeed there is.
The implications of this are massive, right?
Yeah.
Because
oh my gosh. There's so much that could
yet
happen.
again, if you haven't seen Rebels, like go watch Rebels. I'm gonna spoil it. Like it's just how it is. It makes sense for talking about the show.
Right.
Thrawn and Ezra are like yeeted out of oh gosh, I'm blanking on his homeworld. Ezra's homeworld. Lothal, yeah.
Lothal.
And we don't know where they go. And after episode 6 chronologically at the end of Rebels, it shows Ahsoka and Sabine going off to find Ezra.
Right.
So it's been 5 years since they started trying to find him.
Last week's episode, we were like speculating, like, would they touch on what, like, on the search for Ezra? And like throughout the whole episode, I was like, I guess it'll be dropped in a very obscure reference. I didn't expect them to directly like ask it like so like straightforwardly at the end, like directly refer to it in that way.
Right, and it's interesting that she said Grand Admiral Thrawn, right? Because she doesn't have any interactions with him in Rebels, so there's obviously some interaction that happens.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like I only just realized it's like right before we started filming, she asks for Thrawn. She doesn't ask for Ezra. And my understanding of it was that Thrawn must have gotten out of whatever they've been in, because like I just thought it was like strange that like she had so many, like Thrawn and Ezra in the same place, but she apparently has chosen to follow up on like the lead of Thrawn, thus implying like Thrawn is either out or Thrawn has been showing signs of like being present. And I just thought that was really interesting that she chose to ask for him specifically, and like that she didn't go to like a Jedi temple to like scan for Ezra. Like she specifically chose to follow up on this guy instead. And I don't know, that I thought was very interesting.
Right, and there are tons of questions. It's like, where is Thrawn, right? He got launched into space with Ezra. Where did they go? Are Ezra and Thrawn like still together? Are they buddy now 5 years later? Did Thrawn kill Ezra, right? Did Ezra maybe turn to the dark side or something in the 5 years, right? Something crazy like that could have happened. Is Thrawn the one who's rebuilding the Empire right now? Is he Moff Gideon's boss, right? Because there's always a bigger fish. I'm going to keep on quoting Qui-Gon Jinn forever. There's so many questions this offers up. And where's Sabine? Because Sabine went off with Ahsoka, but she's not with Ahsoka right now.
That's the other thing I was thinking too. Is like, did they have a fight? Are they chasing separate leads? Is like, because Ahsoka, that's the one character Ahsoka doesn't explicitly refer to. So it's like she's definitely appearing in season 3 or something, season 4 or whatever. Like you can't, you'll have to acknowledge that at some point.
Right, but here's my question: is that setup a setup for this show? Or is that a setup for the Rebels sequel,
right,
that they might be doing?
Well, then I guess that begs the question: is like on a broader scale, do you think the Mandalorian is about to bite off more than it can chew? In the scale of how they do their seasons, in the scale of what they already have going on, do you think they're about to bite off more than they can chew just by like bringing up the legendary Grand Admiral Thrawn and like all the implications of that?
I am. And to be frank, I am. It's the Force Awakens effect. It's the opening so many questions but not knowing the answers. Right. So for me, it's they have to know the answers, right? And know exactly where they're going, because you can't like figuring it all out along the way. You at least have to have an idea, like a strong outline of where the show is going to go from episode to episode.
Right.
Because the pacing of the show has been pretty slow.
Yeah.
And you just introduced a ton of stuff. So I think you have to find a way to kind of, I know this is an episodic show, and it's about
Yeah.
the journey of the Mandalorian more than anything. The story
Right.
isn't necessarily the plot. The
Mhm.
plot is secondary to the journey that the Mandalorian goes through, as is kind of how Westerns work.
Right.
But there's a lot to bite off. I'm almost wondering if the whole Thrawn thing may not even be explored in the Mandalorian.
Mhm.
It may be a thing where it's like they shoot off to an Ahsoka Tano spin-off or a Rebel spin-off, live action or animated,
Mhm.
and then like a season or two later, Moff Gideon may be out of the picture, and then all of a sudden,
They
who's
come
the
back
new
in.
big bad?
Yeah.
Thrawn. And it's like it opens up so many things, because Thrawn's now in the post-sequel era like he was in the extended universe. And
Yeah.
any of you who have read the Timothy Zahn trilogy of Thrawn novels, they're some of the best
Star Wars material
Star Wars
ever.
literature, Star Wars stories ever.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so well written. Thrawn is such a great character trying to take back the Republic.
Mhm. I
But
feel like
unclear
yeah.
what his motive is.
Mhm. I feel like we talked about this last week on the revelation that like Cara Dune or some Alderaan. I feel like you were saying like how they might be like testing the waters, like okay, who are fans like responding to and who can we continue to build the universe out of. I'm just like thinking in my mind, they still again, we know nothing about Moff Gideon. As of right now, we know more about Baby Yoda than we do Moff Gideon and his plans. And even though he's like the big bad of the show, they specifically dropped the reveal that Cara Dune's from Alderaan. We know that Boba Fett's alive. We know that Bo-Katan wants to reclaim Mandalore. We know that Thrawn may or may not be in the picture, which brings in is Ezra on his way as well. And then there's just the nature of the fact that like the show likes to do their seasons 8 episodes, never generally an hour, and they love to do their little world building episodes, which I don't mind. Like we both loved the Passenger chapter 10.
Right.
Like we enjoyed the little world building. It's just like, how do you guys like plan to like? I'd be surprised if they managed to even address Boba before season 2 ends, despite showing him for like 5 seconds. It just, I'm just curious to see like, are they just setting up sequels and like safety nets for sequels, like just so they can like they have a launching point, or are they just kind of like planning to address all of it at some point? Because if they plan to address all of this in any such way, it's going to be like, I don't know, man, that's gonna be crazy because they set up so much.
Yeah, and I don't even know if Boba Fett will ever be in the show again. I would
Right.
not be surprised if he was never in the show again.
Mhm.
And think about all the stuff they've kind of thrown at the wall for possible spin-offs. Boba Fett, which is rumored to possibly be in production right now.
Yeah.
We don't know if that's true. The validity is kind of questionable, but
Mhm.
Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Cara Dune, Ahsoka / Rebels. I
Mhm.
mean, those are 4 different possible shows that they may be kind of throwing at the wall and see how fans react.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if the Boba one, if it turned out to be true, some sort of like Boba Cub Band thing, because like we know Timothy Olyphant can't be done with the Mandalorian. Like you don't introduce a character like that and write him off with one episode, or maybe you do. I don't know, but like still, there's yeah, that's 4. That's 4 whole spin-offs that they've kind of like teased in
Yeah,
like the past 3 episodes.
right. And it just leaves so many questions. And let's get to the end of the episode where Ahsoka tells Mando to go to this ancient Jedi planet and bring him to the top of the temple where he'll meditate essentially, and he will Grogu, Baby Yoda. I'm starting to get used to call him Grogu.
Yeah.
Will choose his path, and a Jedi will find him. But she says, but there aren't many Jedi anymore.
To which I screamed at the TV screen, Luke Skywalker. I was
Right.
like, oh my god, this is like again we're another character on the way. I mean, unless they pull someone else out, but
Right.
how can it not be Luke at this point?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Luke Skywalker is like, oh, she's never met Luke Skywalker. I'm like, that feels kind of weird.
Right.
Like, you were in the galaxy where Luke Skywalker is kind of a legend.
Yeah.
Like, he blew up the first Death Star, defeated the Emperor and Darth Vader.
Well, that's yeah. Well, I guess that brings up its own question, like, of like, because like we know that Mando doesn't know the Force. We know that like Grief Karga didn't know the Force in reference to that do the magic hand thing from the season 1 finale. So I'm just like, they might know Luke Skywalker? Like, do they know he's a Jedi? Do they even like if someone like, oh, Luke Skywalker's a Jedi? Do they even know what that means? Type thing.
Right.
Like, how far did the legend spread? I guess.
Right. I mean, that's the big question because it seems like news travels slow in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone, barely anyone knows who a Jedi is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been only like 20 or 30 years since they were the most prominent figures in the galaxy.
Right.
But now it's like, no. So here's the question. That's where Mando's essentially quested to go for the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he gets there next episode?
See, I don't know because again, the show loves to set up huge story points and then go on a complete tangent the next one, and then it goes back to the story. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the next episode, like he gets attacked, his ship gets wrecked yet again, and he crash lands and he has to like fight his way. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the plot in the episode after is when he finally makes it to the Jedi Temple, just because the show loves to like plot itself like that. And I don't know, like maybe, who knows? There's 3 episodes left at this point, so they might just accelerate the storytelling, but also like again, they love their video game plotting, which is something that I felt kind of stood out in this episode. Like when Ahsoka was like the whole plot was to get a Jedi, and then the one Jedi he meets, he's like, I actually can't handle this problem for you. But if you go to here, then maybe you can meet someone who can handle the problem for you.
Right.
I was like, oh my god, this is getting a little like noticeable now, the video game style writing,
the plot structure of
and also if like, sorry, just one last thing, you can go. Sorry, but like if whoever the Jedi is, Luke Skywalker or not, if they tell Mando, I can't take care of Grogu for you, I'm gonna lose my mind, because that means he's gonna have to go find something, another quest, another mission. Like, it's just gonna keep on going.
At that point, Mando should just shoot the Jedi and say you're worthless.
Yeah.
Like, you're not even doing your job. But I don't even know if he makes it this season to that temple, because there's the tracking beacon we know that was installed on his ship.
Mm-hmm.
I thought possibly that they could end up jumping Ahsoka in this episode and taking her.
I thought that's how
them being the Empire.
I thought that's how it was gonna end. Like when he was saying goodbye to Baby Yoda, I was like, for sure, like Gideon and his Death Troopers or whatever, we're gonna be waiting outside the Razor Crest. Like, I thought for sure that was how it was gonna end.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a possibility, and who knows? Maybe they come next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Mando doesn't even. Did we see him make the jump to hyperspace or get off the planet?
Yeah, I think we saw him leave. That was kind of about it. We didn't really see. I don't think we did see him jump to hyperspace.
Mm-hmm. Because I have a feeling Ahsoka's a 1 episode character. I don't think she's coming back this season.
Right.
But there's a lot of story to tell, and I think Moff Gideon's going to play a much heavier hand the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they find the Jedi, the planet they're looking for. I can't. It starts with a T, like something close to like Tycoon or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember either.
Or Tythoon or something, a planet like that. I don't think they get there this season. I think they run into the Imperials and something happens from there. Who knows? Maybe they get Baby Yoda from Mando. And then the last episode or 2 is Mando assembling the squad to go fight Gideon and get the child back.
Right.
Like that's a very plausible outcome for the rest of the season, especially with 3 episodes left. Otherwise, I don't really know what else there is to talk about this episode. I mean, this has only been maybe our longest review ever.
Yeah, for sure. I knew, I was like, the Thrawn discussion alone is gonna take up at least 15 minutes, just because just from the sheer implications, as always, of what this could mean. But I mean, I guess we could touch on the directing technical stuff if you want.
Yeah, we can touch on that quickly.
Okay.
I think aesthetics wise, as far as how the sets and the production looked, I think everything was great. I loved how they designed the smoke for the opening scene. I like how all that stuff's directed.
Yeah.
The action in this episode is kind of a mixed bag for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's Filoni directing or if that's second unit stunt coordinators directing that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
I mean, that's its whole own thing. I feel like there are scenes where it stands out to me that Filoni is learning how to direct.
Yeah.
Um, I know how this comes from like a student who's directed like 2 short films, but you can kind of tell they're little things, they're wide shots that don't quite feel right. Like when that moment where it's nighttime, Ahsoka's talking to Mando and Baby Yoda's looking at the fire, and there's just this wide shot. And I'm like, the wide shot doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It's little things like that. It's like the framing of this doesn't feel right. The way this is, the frame, not that specific scene actually. That seems fine frame wise, but it's like this should be like a moving type of shot to kind of make it more interesting, and so you can see character. Like it feels like it's almost you can tell he's learning, and I think he's getting better um, in his directing skills, especially from season 1. I think I noticed an improvement. But there is stuff like when Mando first gets off his ship. Like I think the way they shoot that is weird. And this will get into another thing. I feel like I can tell when they're different people wearing the Mando's armor. I don't know who's who.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes Mando looks really, really buff, and sometimes he just looks like a normal dude. And I'm like, all right, am I just going crazy, or
Yeah, I got you.
is it noticeable that like the different people, like their bodies are different?
I mean, I do remember. Yeah, I do remember in like in our chapter 9 review, I brought up. I'm like, I don't know about you, but like Mando seems really like built this season. Like he seems like he filled out the costume like really well. I guess that's just I can't remember the stunt guys who helped who like stood in for Pedro Pascal in season 1, but I guess that was just them like swapping in and out on a production basis, maybe.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and it's just the way it's shot makes it look a little weird. But if I'm not, I really hope they get that fixed, because it's a little thing, but to me at least, it really stands out.
Right.
But what were your thoughts on the directing of this episode before we wrap up?
Well, first I want to say the production design and the tone I really loved. It was very like just from the magistrate's like inner area and just from the design of the town and fortress. I was like, there's some definite like seven samurai like Japanese like warrior like influences happening here. And like I know like director Akira Kurosawa was a big influence on like George Lucas, and I was like, I feel like all of this was like the shot of the woods was both like felt like Vietnam War, felt like against samurai like epics. I just recently watched Seven Samurai, so like all the like the scorched earth woods was a very much a very like I love that visual. I love that and like this smoky like yellow like icky feel of like that was like clouding the area felt great. The whole like temple feel of the walls and like the fact that it even had like a warning bell. I thought that was really cool. I love the production design and stuff. So it was such a specific like Seven Samurai vibe again. And I love that. Directing wise, I don't know. Like if you watched our last review, you know that like I love the action in like chapter 12 a lot. Like I think Carl Weathers did such a great job there. And here, like it wasn't bad again, but I just feel like after comparison to that and or like the dog fight in chapter 10, like I kind of felt a little underwhelmed, but I guess because I don't know, I just felt a little underwhelmed action wise, and everything you said basically on like just the editing, the cutting was just some things just stood out. But I just suppose that's just Filoni making the jump again from animation to live action.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say is this show needs to get some stakes quickly. Because we're going on a journey, but whenever there's action, and I think this is the problem with the action, it's not the action itself, it's that we don't feel there's stakes. Mando feels like he's unkillable, right? His armor is impenetrable, blaster bolts just go right off of him. Even lightsabers, he can block freaking lightsabers with his gauntlet.
Right.
He seems OP, and there's nothing that he's fighting for that's really like all that urgent.
Like just that scene from chapter 11 when he charges the stormtrooper fire and he's like taking hits but he's doing fine. He has like carrying 2 grenades with him. It's just like, yeah, he'll be fine. Like, doesn't matter how many people are shooting at him, he'll be fine, type thing.
Right. I think, and this is part that made the action so great in season 1.
Mhm.
Like in episode 3, when he's with the baby or the child, and he's going to get the child, right? There's an urgency to that. It's like, I'm going to get the child before they maybe kill the child, or
Right.
like do something bad to the child. And there's an urgency to it. There's a feeling of stakes to it because there's that connection between Mando and the kid.
Mhm.
I haven't felt that this season.
Mhm.
There are very few moments where I'm like, oh, the child's in danger, right?
Yeah.
Those are the moments where the action's great. That's why I love The Passenger,
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
feel like the stakes to the action are there. It's like,
Mhm.
the child might die this. Like they're really going after the child. They really making me feel the stakes.
Yeah. That's why I can't understand why people didn't like that. Like, that was a pure, genuine, like, survival, like, like, survivalist horror episode, like, in chapter 10. Like, the ship was wrecked. They had no cover. Like, it always just ramped up the amount of problems they had.
Mhm.
And then, like, here it was just kind of like, they'll be fine. Like, Mando assaulting the town, we were like, it would have been fine. But then with Ahsoka Tano, it was like, yeah, they're
Yeah.
the victory was confirmed before they set foot in there.
I mean, they even said it beforehand. Like
Mhm.
when Mando said, a Jedi and the Mandalorian, they'll never see it coming. It's
Mhm.
like, it's already game over. Like you said it yourself. They need something massive. They need something like Baby Yoda getting taken, and they need to find Baby Yoda, and they need to find Baby Yoda now. Like
Yeah.
that's the sort of stakes they need to put into this to really invigorate us as an audience, more than just being like, this is a good season. This is a good season. We need to be like, oh my God, like what is going to happen to Baby Yoda?
Right.
Because Baby Yoda is the heart of the show, even if, he's not the main character.
Right. And like, they don't need to go full Game of Thrones and like be killing people unexpectedly. Like every other episode is just like a matter of, can they do this? Like, want to have just a little sense of, can they do this? Can they get by this threat or whatever?
Right. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. I don't think we're seeing Luke this season. So if you're one of those people who's like, oh, another Jedi is going to find him with Luke, don't get your hopes up. Please don't. You're going to be bummed out. But with that, that wraps up this review of The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 5, Chapter 13, because they do it this way and it's really annoying. The Jedi, featuring Ahsoka Tano, played by Rosaria Dawson, who I believe did an amazing job.
Yes.
Despite the tall task of replacing Ashley Eckstein. I missed the voice of Ashley Eckstein, but I was able to get over it, and I think she did a great job paying homage to Ashley's performance in the animated show. So thank you guys for checking out our review. If you don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, leave a comment down below if you have any questions or anything to say about the episode, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.